Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we're privileged to have with us Tony Hughes, who is a professional speaker and sales consultant. Tony, welcome to the program.
Hey, Mike, it's great to be on the show. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. And, I heard a statistic that I think that is interesting, and I would like you to go a little bit deeper on, but just the momentum being in your LinkedIn profile and growing so fast on the topic of B2B sales leadership. So tell us a little bit about that, and then what is causing that? What is that groundswell coming from?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is an incredibly powerful platform. At the time we're recording this, there's close to 500 million members worldwide. 2 people join a second. And for any entrepreneur, anyone in business, anyone in sales, basically everybody that we need to get to help us be successful is there inside LinkedIn, yet so few people use it well. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that LinkedIn is also the biggest blogging and publishing platform on the planet. So in the last 2 years or so, I got really serious about basically paying it forward and giving my IP away and publishing original content. So I've managed to build a following of about 150,000 people that follow my blog. It's currently growing at 5,000 a week. So it's amazing if you go and be where your market is, go be where your audience is, you can really build following. So rather than trying to drag people back to your website, just go be where they are in the marketplace. It's very powerful.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing thought. And I've heard this. Have you heard something similar? But when you think about where your target audience is, that's where you want to focus. And you have to know your target audience, number one. And then you have to think, well, where would they be on social media? And then I heard this example, and it really stuck with me, that Twitter is like someone dressed in shorts and flip-flops, and Facebook is like someone dressed in a casual business attire maybe, or casual clothes, and then LinkedIn would be your buttoned-up suit and tie kind of audience. So I would suspect that many people would fall into those categories, and if you do sell in the B2B world, then probably Twitter is not where you need to be, but LinkedIn is.
Yeah, LinkedIn is certainly very important. Twitter really plays a vital role because Twitter is an excellent notification engine. So if you want to notify people of things you're publishing, sharing their content, Twitter is certainly a really good way to do that. And Twitter is important for the concept of social listening. Everybody in business who wants to go generate revenue needs to know what the trigger events that cause a person to go and start their buyer's journey, because strategic selling by definition really means engaging early at the most senior level possible and help set an agenda and build the business case for the person. That's how you become the emotional favorite, so that if they do need to go to market to get some kind of competitive pricing, all of the others are coming to the party very late. So listening on things like Twitter is a way of finding out what's going in the market, and LinkedIn is powerful for listening for trigger events, in that people changing roles is probably the most powerful trigger event for someone that's trying to find opportunities or drive revenue.
Yeah, I agree. And, in the thought process of B2B selling, I've always said this about LinkedIn, that back in the old days of sales training, you would be taught when you go into the prospect's office, you look around and see their, golf pictures and sailing, and you would be able to start some conversation that way. And these days, it's so easy on social media that you will be able to see what their interests are and have that all prepared ahead of time. But many times you want to get connected or introduced to someone, and you're not connected to them on LinkedIn. So the benefit there is you can see who is already connected to them that could give you an introduction. So I think that there's so many little tips and tricks and strategies with LinkedIn, and you bring up a really spectacular point of many people A, don't use it the right way, but B, don't even use the publishing platform to expand their reach. And I think that's a really big takeaway there. Let's talk about B2B sales leadership and B2B sales, because you said an interesting word, and I love it. It's part of my tagline, strategic, strategy, because too many people are ready, fire, aim, and they just figure, let's just shotgun approach and fix it in the wake of our, activity. But selling is very strategic, or should be, and then social selling needs to have that element layered in as well. So how do you integrate and speak on and teach on strategic social selling?
Yeah, Mike, that's a really good question. So the first thing is the concept of social selling, that term is really a misnomer. Most of what people describe as social selling is really social marketing. So what we know is about 3/4 of people that we run any kind of outreach to that we want to generate a meeting with, about 3/4 of those people will research us online before they choose to engage with us. Even if they Google us, normally the first thing that comes up in Google is our LinkedIn profile anyway. So the really first thing is, from a social marketing point of view, we need to build a really good, strong personal brand. And there's a lot of basics people need to cover. I won't bore the audience with that, but certainly publishing is part of it, because buyers today expect us to have done our research and have some kind of insight. And in most sales engagements fail to meet the expectations of the buyer. So it's really important for salespeople or anyone in business to make sure that their LinkedIn profile shows that they're someone who's well-connected, professional, and has genuine insight. So that's actually really important. But the problem with the term social selling is it's caused most sales floors to become like libraries. You sort of walk on a sales floor today and it's like everyone's snoozing. And to tell you a couple of amazing examples of this, I was interviewed on a show out of London a couple of months ago, and Timothy Hughes in London, awesome guy that I respect. We're not related, by the way, but he was telling me that one of the companies he was visiting had gone full bottle on social selling and actually removed the phones from the sales floor. And I said to him, that is a complete act of insanity. Another one of my clients here in Sydney, in Australia, has said to all of the salespeople, if you want to make phone calls, you need to book one of these quiet booths in the office. You can't be making phone calls from the floor because it disturbs other people. And again, that's a complete act of insanity. The original and most powerful digital social selling tool is the phone. And all social selling strategies need to be designed to get a phone call happening with the target person. So social is excellent for researching. It's excellent for building a brand and setting an agenda that goes before us, even before we make the call, but buyers will tend to research. But at the end of the day, we've got to create human-to-human connection, and the live voice of somebody is the best way to do it.
Yeah, and I feel like there's, not for the larger organizations that you mentioned, but for a salesperson that feels like, let me jump on social, there's almost an element of laziness there, because it gives them the feeling that I'm doing some selling because I'm on social media, researching, connecting, retweeting, whatever the case may be. But if you're not rolling up your sleeves and making the calls or visiting belly to belly or handwritten note, all the different ways out there, we don't want to use that social selling technology as a crutch. Have you seen that as well in organizations as the byproduct of focusing too much on that social selling?
Yes, that's exactly the case. If you give a salesperson an excuse to not call, they'll grab that. I've had salespeople say to me or ask me, what's the best time of the day to actually call a prospect? Now, there is an answer to that question, but I'm not going to give it to your listeners, and I don't give it to the salespeople that ask me, because if you say to them the best time to call is between X time and X time of the day, that they will go, great, well, that's the only time that I'm going to try and call anybody. The truth is, you need to be calling people all during the business day. So you want to start while they're in the car or traveling to the office and then going home at the end of the day. You don't want to invade people's personal time, but you need to have this massive bias to action, and people today need to adopt the right combinations. My next book that's being published by Amacom out of New York is going to be in bookstores this coming January. It's called combo prospecting, but it's about getting the right combinations of activity that go and build pipeline, because the number one problem, it's not really a problem, it's a symptom of deeper issues, but the number one problem people will tell you they've got is that they just don't have enough pipe. They'll say they know how to sell, and often they don't really, but they believe they just don't have enough pipe. And what they need to do is get very disciplined in targeting people, creating the right narrative. Most people are having the wrong kind of conversations. I'll just key in on something that you said a bit earlier, Mike, about how in the old days you'd walk into someone's office and you'd look at the marlin on the wall and the photos of the yachts and you think, great, this is a way for me to build rapport. Let me tell you something today. The people worth selling to are not lonely and bored and looking for a new friend. They just aren't, and they're also not lying awake at night hoping someone's going to call them and tell them about the joys and wonders of their company, product, and solutions. Everyone is massively busy, stressed out of their brain, they're time poor. So people have got to create a narrative. Salespeople need a narrative that creates value in the conversation rather than behaving like the value comes from when I sell them the product. So we've got to have some kind of insight. We need to be calling people and say, hey, Mike, the reason I'm calling is I'm working with others in your industry, and in doing some research on your own company, I really think you have the opportunity to improve in this particular area of your business. I'd like to get together for 20 minutes and see whether there's an opportunity for us to build a business case together to explore that. So you have that kind of conversation, because the buyer is thinking, well, I would like to know what others in my industry are doing. There's a reason to meet. We need to lead with why a conversation matters rather than with who we are and what we do and how we do it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Tony. And, I stole this from Brian Tracy years ago, and I've heard many other people use it too, but it's like everyone's favorite radio station is WIIFM. What's in it for me? And we need to broadcast and advertise on that radio station, not what's in it for me, the salesperson, but what's in it for that prospect, what's going to capture their attention. And the example you just gave a second ago is you're knowing enough about them and their industry to pinpoint a problem and maybe a sore spot that you can speak briefly about a solution or a potential solution. And I think that's what cuts through the clutter, is for people to realize, okay, they did their homework. And I think that we've all seen, even on TV or The Apprentice or The Prophet or different ones of these shows, that someone will come in and the expert says, you didn't even research my company to make sure that you knew this and this about me. And I think that it's those little things that get blown up to be really big things. So I love that point that you made. And then another thing you mentioned, I teach marketing at some universities, and one of the marketing strategies is IMC, which stands for Integrated Marketing Communications, which it has a factor of keeping your brand message congruent across all channels, but it's also having a variety of channels, because if you rely on one channel too much, it's very easy to tune it out. So your example about the places that have no phones and they're only doing social media selling and reach out, that's easy to turn that off. You can block someone, you can turn off something, but if you had a outreach where it's one touch is a phone call, one touch is a visit, one touch is a letter, one is a whatever, fill in the blank with all the many tactics that we use, that's what's going to keep people kind of not getting bored with your message. Have you seen kind of those a variety of touch points that way be effective?
Yeah, Mike, you're so on the money, and that is in essence the heart of my book, because it's about combos, and it mustn't be linear. So the really important thing is that whether you're an entrepreneur or a salesperson and you're targeting an organization, the reality today inside any reasonable size organization is that, there's going to be up to maybe 7 or so people or groups of people that need to achieve consensus before they're going to decide to do anything with you. So even if there's a primary decision maker, they'll still want consensus within their organization from a change management point of view. So the thing that's important is use things like LinkedIn Sales Navigator and really go and research that organization, identify who you think is in the power base, look for those weak ties from your organization to theirs. And we all know that the fastest path to revenue is through referrals. So I believe no one should really be making cold calls today, because it's so easy to make a call a warm call, to find some kind of context or reason, to find someone who can provide you with an introduction. So the thing that's important is you identify that power base, you find some points of relevance and context that can drive your outreach. And then what people need to do is don't be linear. Don't think, well, I'll start at this person and I'll send them an email, and then I'll phone them the next day and leave them a voicemail. And gee, I don't want to leave another voicemail for at least a week because then it looks like I'm desperate. You got to forget all that. The thing you've got to do is phone people, and then within 90 seconds, you phone them, you leave a voicemail, you send an email, you even text them, you jump into LinkedIn and you send them a connection request. The more channels you can get going, the better, because every single buyer faces a white wall of noise, and so long as we've got the right narrative. If we're talking about us and our product and I want to meet with you to tell you about my company, that is a massive mistake. No one is interested. We just look annoying. But if we've got genuine insight and some value in having a conversation, we want to talk about what we're seeing within their industry. For example, if we can have that kind of narrative, then we're not annoying. We've got a good reason to meet. And we want that other person thinking, wow, this person is determined. I'm going to call them back, because if we just send an email, the truth is that easily either gets caught in some kind of spam filter or it just gets lost in their inbox. It's not that they didn't want to return the call. They're just incredibly busy. So we've got to find combinations that enable us to break through. The beginning of that is having the right narrative, and then we've got to embrace the technology, make it multi-channel, and make sure that the phone is the primary goal of all of that initial outreach. We've got to get a conversation going.
I think a lot of people would be nodding their heads going, I agree with that. That's wonderful. And let's say that a certain major percentage actually will implement that. And that's the big thing, is you hear something and then you have to implement it and do it. Here's something that I would say should be a writer downer or a takeaway or a big piece that people need to keep in mind. You mentioned referrals, and I feel like there's a big problem where you're right there and aggressive, and you are responsive before the sale is made. And then as soon as the sale is made, now they just the switch gets flipped off, and then now this person might need a little support or a question, and you're off hunting down the next big game. Well, if you have that same sense of urgency and responsiveness and communication channels opened up all the way through anytime, that keeps the door open for being referred and introduced, because they feel like you didn't just take them for granted and then turn away once the sale is made. Do you find that the case as well?
Yeah, you and I are very aligned, Mike. I agree with this. So let me talk about a bit of a framework for this. So I've actually got a framework that defines what strategic selling and what strategic social selling really looks like. And what I say to people is that as a seller, you need to stop thinking about the end of the game being you get the purchase order or the money from the client. The end of the game is when they have published for you a case study and where they are an advocate for you in the market. That's the end game. And rather than thinking about how do I close this prospect, what we think about is when do they need to be live realizing the benefits of what it is that I'm going to be selling them, and let me get on their side of the desk and work with them to make sure that they can achieve that and that they manage all of their risks. And if you can adopt that kind of mindset, what happens with the client is you behave like a project manager and build out a bit of a project plan. You validate with them why the date matters, because all salespeople need to be aware that the biggest competitor they face is not traditional competitors in the marketplace, but it's client apathy and them just staying in current state and not changing. About 25% of deals, allegedly qualified deals, in CRM systems around the world get lost just to do nothing. So you've got to say to the client, you've got to make sure you understand why they're going to do anything at all and change state. You then need to understand in your own mind why they're going to buy from me and not somebody else. And you then need a strategy to make sure you're going to win the deal. So if you think about them being live, realizing the benefits, and the deal is not really done until that happens, you go back and do a post-implementation benefits realization presentation to them to validate that the business case happened. And you sit down with the client, you take them to lunch or have a coffee with them, and you say, hey, it's been great working with you and your team. Really appreciate the fact that you awarded the business to us. We've been able to deliver for you. I want to ask you a question. And now what most salespeople ask is, why did you pick us over the competition? They think that's good for them to know in competing, but it's not the most powerful question at all. The most powerful question is this: what happened inside your own organization that caused you to think that you needed a system like this in the first place? So what you're trying to understand is, what was the trigger event that started them down their path? And once you understand
you can
that,
then identify that in other organizations.
Exactly.
With. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So now you know what you're looking for in the marketplace. It's really powerful, and that enables you to sell strategically, which is go and inject yourself very early in the organization around what the particular problem domain is. And now you know, using social tools, what it is that you're listening for. So you're listening for the trigger events that will facilitate early engagement.
Yeah, I love that, and it reminds me of the old sales book by Chet Holmes, The Ultimate Sales Machine. Have you read that one?
Yeah, it's an excellent book.
And I remember one of the statistics being something to the effect of, there's only 3% of people out there that are ready to buy your product right now. And the other 97% are a mix of they'll never buy it, or like a major percentage of them might buy, but it's going to be a long time. So he took the approach of educate, stay in touch. And if you can add in that layer of what you just said, which I think is genius, which is, what is that trigger thing that most salespeople are not going to be aware of? But if you know that trigger and you start watching for that, then you can start that relationship building, that education process a lot sooner, and then you're the obvious choice. And then let some other competitor come in late in the game and start pitching and blustering and making the process a little muddy. And then you are calmly there with that voice of reason, and you're the obvious choice. So I think that is, for me, just a huge takeaway. And I have a feeling that we could probably talk for about another 3.5 hours and take, have some wonderful more nuggets to go over. But why don't we just say, what would be the best way that people could reach out, learn about yourself, your program, and your upcoming book that's coming out, and what's the best way that they can learn more from you?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So people, probably the best place to reach me is inside LinkedIn. So if you just search for Tony Hughes inside LinkedIn. I've also got a couple of websites. My speaker website is tonyhughes.com.au, and my sales methodology website is RSVPselling.com.
Excellent. Well, it almost seemed like we had a couple conversations before this interview to kind of get aligned, but this is the first time we're talking. But it just seems like so many of the things that we believe in and espouse in our methodologies are very alike. So I really enjoyed talking to you and pulled away some learning nuggets myself. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day, Tony.
Thanks, Mike. And if everyone can look out for combo prospecting in the bookshops in January.
Excellent. Sounds wonderful. You have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.